If you're coming to London and you want to see a show in the West End, there is a really hard decision in front of you, and that is choosing the show that you're going to see. And especially if you're not a native English speaker, it might be really hard to narrow down which shows you are going to enjoy and understand and you're going to find entertaining. And I have a very good tip for you, and that is to go and see shows that you are familiar with. What do I mean by that? Well, this video is going to dive into the movie musicals, which could be musicals that became movies and are really famous, or other way around, which you can currently see in London. And this will help you narrow down your choice to 10 musicals, which you can go and see and have the best time because you already kind of know the story. If this is your first time on my channel, my name is Christina and I am on a mission to see 52 shows in the West End this year. This is a channel where I share my impressions about the shows and also theater tips and tricks. So if you would like to know more about everything that I get up to, then make sure to subscribe. So I'm going to start at the very bottom and we're going to talk about one of the most famous musicals that have actually inspired a motion picture of the same name, and that is Mamma Mia. This is a musical that was penned as kind of a jukebox musical of all ABBA songs and weaved into this story about Sophie, who is getting married and isn't sure who her dad is, and she is sending letters to 3 men who her mother was involved with at the time when she was conceived, and they all come to this Greek island for her wedding. And all of this story is delivered through ABBA songs which you might know very well, such as Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, Money Money Money, all of the biggest ABBA songs. And actually the musical got so popular that it was turned into a movie with some of the biggest stars and celebrities such as Meryl Streep. And the success of this story and musical didn't only turn into 1 movie, but 2 and potentially 3. So this is all a sign that this musical is something that really resonates with people, and it's a great fun, very light-hearted, and you can go and enjoy the songs that you already know with a storyline that is really easy to follow, especially if you've seen the movie. You can book tickets for this show until September 2025, and tickets go for as low as £35. Moving on to the position number 9, and we have an amazing musical called Matilda. You might know about this musical because there is a movie of the same name, but originally this was all inspired by a novel, and the story follows this very gifted girl who has this special powers, and throughout this story and musical you're following Matilda on her adventures as she goes to school and is faced with a pretty bad headmaster who is really treating kids like she shouldn't. So Matilda uses her skills to really stand up in front of this headmaster and also figure out her own amazing and magical world. This is a perfect musical to go and take children in between 9 and 14 years old, but if you're an adult and you simply like these kind of stories, then you're gonna love it. This is a musical with amazing music, with very engaging set design, and everything about it is totally worth seeing. And don't take my word for it, actually this musical was adapted into a new movie that was released a couple of years ago. So this musical and this story has a really big following and is definitely worth checking out if you're coming to London. You can book tickets for Matilda until May 2025 for as little as £20. We've got to the position number 8, and this is a musical that first was movie, a very popular movie, chick flick, rom-com, however you want to call it, and I know you know what I'm talking about. It's Mean Girls. This is a musical that was released only a few years ago, so it's still fairly fresh and new. The movie was originally released in 2004 and it has become one of the most iconic movies from this era, and everyone, especially if you're a girl who was growing up at that time, has a special place in their heart for this movie. The story follows Katie, who moves with her mom to this new school in America, and she's kind of faced with a lot of different challenges, such as she's first introduced to one group of friends, then she becomes the popular girl and takes over Regina George, who is like the meanest girl of all, but then Katie becomes the mean girl, and it's all about basically finding your crowd, figuring out and navigating high school life, and in the meantime learning how not to hurt other people. This story resonated with people for so long, and this musical is just another celebration of this story and this work of art. In terms of the music, it is really upbeat and is really fun. Mean Girls is a great musical to go for a night out with your friends or with your mom, and it definitely guarantees you a good time. You can book Mean Girls until April 2025 for as little as £25. We got to the position number 7, and I'm talking about one of the most iconic musicals ever, but this musical was first a novel and then it was adapted to several movies until it became, I think, the most known for actually its musical form, and that is The Phantom of the Opera. This is a musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber, who follows this musical genius who lives in the Paris Opera House and gets obsessed with Christine, who is a soprano in the opera, and the two of them have a very weird, I would say artistic relationship until he kidnaps her and captivates her. And this musical is a great combination of opera and musical theater, so if you're into like more serious style of theater and you like experiencing something more glamorous with amazing stage effects and just generally music that is a bit more serious, then The Phantom of the Opera is a perfect show for you to go and see. The Phantom of the Opera is one of the longest running musicals and it doesn't have the closing date, but currently you can book tickets on the system until March 2025 for as little as £25. We've got to the position number 6, and the musical I'm going to tell you about was first a movie released in 1993, and in my opinion is one of those movies turned into musicals that you just didn't expect that is going to have as big success as it did. I'm talking about Mrs. Doubtfire. This movie is really interesting family story where the story follows Daniel, who is an actor and who's been going through a very messy divorce with his wife, and she got the full custody of the kids, so now he's not able to see them. But he came up with this brilliant idea to dress up as a nanny and apply to take care of his kids, and he is now this alter ego of Mrs. Doubtfire, who is actually developing this really heartwarming bond with the kids. And this musical came about a few years ago. It is still on in London until February 2025. You can get tickets for as little as £30. I would say this is probably not the most groundbreaking musical that you can see, but if you're coming to London as a family and you want to just have a fun evening and watch something that everyone can resonate with, then Mrs. Doubtfire is definitely worth checking out. We're halfway through and the position number 5 is reserved for the longest running musical in the world, and that is Les Miserables. This is originally a novel by Victor Hugo, who wrote this long time ago, and it's a very sad story about the French Revolution and about people in the 19th century France and the revolutions that took place during that time and how this has impacted everyday folk. Les Mis is one of the most successful musicals of all time. It has some of the most memorable songs ever, and it follows Jean Valjean, who is a convict turned mayor of this town, and while he's trying to build his new life, the past is catching up with him slowly and he's running into a lot of issues, and he's not the only person who's running into so many issues and challenges during this period in France. I need to say that this is a sad story with some uplifting moments, but I probably wouldn't recommend this for a family night out. It is a little bit more serious and it's probably more suited for a date night or if you're going on your own or with your friends rather than with kids. You might have seen musical Les Miserables with Eddie Redmayne, Hugh Jackman, Anne Hathaway. It is one of the biggest blockbuster musicals that was released in the past 10 years, 15 years, and it was a pretty successful movie for everyone who likes this musical, but it also introduced musical to some new audiences. You can probably see Les Mis anytime you come to London, but currently you can book tickets until September 2025 for as little as £25. The position number 4 is reserved for Moulin Rouge. This is a musical which was inspired by a movie with Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor. It's the movie directed by Baz Luhrmann. It is one of the most iconic movies of that era and also one of the most famous Baz Luhrmann's works. This movie has a very strong visual identity which was perfectly translated on stage. So as soon as you enter the theater, you are immediately transported into Paris, into this bohemian lifestyle amongst people who live and breathe art and creativity and music and love and passion. And all of this is intertwined in this story between Santine, who works in this brothel, and Christian, who is a poet, and he comes to Paris to discover this new world and he falls in love. The storyline is not the only thing that is familiar in this musical if you've seen the movie, but also you'll hear quite a lot of songs because this is a jukebox musical, which means that it combines all different songs from pop singers into this narrative, such as Elton John, Beyonce, Katy Perry. There are so many popular songs that are in the show, including Lady Marmalade by Christina Aguilera and Pink, a very popular tune that I'm sure you know. So all of these songs are within this musical, and it is an amazing date out or a night out with friends. You can book Moulin Rouge until January 2025 for as little as £25. We've got to the position number 3, and this spot is reserved for a musical that was first time put on stage in 1966. So it's an old musical, but it recently had its revival in London and now is also in New York, and it is one of the biggest and most talked about revivals ever, and it is the musical Cabaret. In this particular case, musical came before the movie that is also very well known with Liza Minnelli and Joel Grey, but generally this is a musical that's considered a classic amongst Broadway and West End fans. The story follows Sally Bowles amongst other characters, and she is a dancer at the Kit Kat Club Club, and she's interacting with a lot of different people from all walks of life. This is a very powerful story about people who are traditionally considered misfits, but it's also a story set in a particular time in Germany, and this is just before the Second World War started. And it's also a story how all of that impacted regular people who lived in Berlin at that time. The reason why the most recent cabaret revival is one of the most talked about shows is the fact that the theater is completely transformed in the Kit Kat Club. There's seating around the stage, and as soon as you enter the theater, you are taken to this completely different world. You're not allowed to film anything. You're given a shot of schnapps as soon as you arrive, and there are dancers and cast members standing there with you for a good hour before the show starts. They're having their own choreographies, and it is all very fluid, and it feels more like you're entering a club, not necessarily theater. And it is an amazing show that has drawn quite a lot of celebrities to take a shot in playing MC, and Sally Bowles, including Cara Delevingne, Eddie Redmayne, are just to name a few. You can get tickets for Cabaret until May 2025 for as little as £30. We've got to the number 2, and that is the musical Back to the Future. The reason why this musical is so high at the top is because the movie has one of the highest ratings out of all musicals that I've been talking about, and this musical is definitely made for all of the fans of the movie. And it follows Marty, who travels back in time, to be more precise, in 1955, and he accidentally prevents his parents from meeting, which means that his existence is actually in question now, and from there he is trying to do everything in his power to get them to be together, and also to save himself and come to the future or to the present moment. It is a fun show with a lot of stage effects, but the opinion about the show is a little bit split. I think the people who love this movie and this story are just gonna adore that there is a stage version and stage adaptation of it. However, if you're just going for music and to witness great theater, then probably some of the other shows that I talked about might be a little bit better for you to check out, because this is not maybe qualified as the best musical from the perspective of great musical numbers. But that's not to say that this is not a great show to watch and experience and enjoy. You can see Back to the Future until July 2025 for as little as £20. And we've got to number 1, which is by far one of the most highly rated movies, but also one of the most successful musicals ever, and I'm talking about The Lion King. This Disney cartoon, which was released in 1994, is still one of the most beloved stories ever. People, no matter what age, just love this story and love relating to it and love music from this movie. And even Disney has redone these movies in different ways now when we have all different technology and it's not only a cartoon. But when it comes to the musical was released in 1997. And what is so special about this musical, besides the amazing story and music by Elton John, it is also incredible costumes. By this point, no one tried to do costumes like this before. The costumes of this show are borderline puppets, and it is so incredible to see how actors are mimicking animals in the way that they move, in the way that they act on stage, and there are so many beautiful, simple, and incredible moments in the show that you will definitely love if you go and see it. The Lion King is definitely the classic in the West End or on Broadway. It is one of the most beloved shows across the board, and I think if you're coming either by yourself or with a partner or with a friend or with family, going to see Lion King is something that is on everyone's bucket list. You can book this show until March 2025 for as little as £35, but doesn't matter, whenever you come to London, this show doesn't have the closing date, so you will be able to go and see it. This concludes my list of 10 shows which you can see if you come to London and you want to make sure that you're going to see a good show that you have heard of. But what about the tickets? How to secure cheap tickets in London? Well, this video is for you.